Welcome everyone to the Trusted Partnerships Roundtable, Catalyst for Creative Digital Public Solutions. This roundtable has been organized as an event to celebrate UNICC 50th anniversary. 50 years of partnerships with all the UN agencies, but also with international organizations, technology companies, civil society and academic organizations that work together to try to solve the world's global problems. And then we could proudly say that we also celebrate in this 50th anniversary that with our partners, we work to support all the SDGs, leveraging the SDG number 17, the partnerships for the goals. And because of that, it is my pleasure to present to all of you our exceptional panel with top representatives from organizations that are establishing strategic partnerships to build innovative solutions for global impact. And I will start giving the floor to the first panel member. She comes from WFP. I will give the floor to her for her to introduce herself. Enrica Porcari, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Prado, and hello everybody. My name is Enrica Porcari. I'm the CIO and Director of Technology at the UN World Food Program, based in Rome. The World Food Program is global humanitarian agency that works in over 90 countries, serving every year approximately 100 million of the most needy people in the world, be that in conflict, across the world over. As an organization, we embraced a very intense technology road to look at how do we improve the way in which we do our work, both in headquarters, in our regular operations, but also in the way in which we serve our beneficiaries. The World Food Program is an airline, is a hotel chain, is a transport organization, is a very large logistics company. As such, we had to embrace and develop a very solid digital platform to ensure that we could do our business in the most efficient and effective way. We also get to know our beneficiaries individually. We establish a one-to-one relationship with over 60 million of our beneficiaries to make sure that we get to know them better so that we can serve them better, establishing a virtuous relationship with them. So I'm very glad to be here to share what partnerships means for us. And I'm also very proud to be helping to serve the partnership of ICC as currently being the chair of the ICC Management Committee. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Enrica. So it's a pleasure for me to give the floor now to Hans Baritt from UNHCR. Hans.
Thanks, Prado. Well, good afternoon to everybody. Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate ICC on 50 years of support to the UN system. Not many tech companies get to a ripe old age of 50 years, so well done to you and your staff and all of your partners. To introduce myself, my name is Hans Baritt. I'm the Controller and Director of Finance and Administration here at UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency. We also celebrated our anniversary recently, 70 years in December last year. UNHCR, as you may know, was created in 1950. Tasked with finding homes for refugees in Europe after the Second World War. 70 years later, we're still in business and serving 80 million displaced people around the world today. So very different than what we had 70 years ago. Our budget, just to give you a few numbers, I'm a finance person, so I like to talk about money. Our budget last year was $9 billion US dollars. We raised just over $5 billion, which is good, fantastic news. It's one of our best years ever. But there still is a sizable gap between the money we receive and the needs we have to serve the persons of concern. As controller, my role in the organization is what you would expect, focusing on finances, treasury, accounting, reporting, controls, etc. But I'd say my single biggest role really, or objective rather, is finding ways to be more efficient with the funds we receive from the donors. It's really to make those dollars go further. And technology plays a large part of that. Partnership obviously plays a large part of making those dollars go further. Just for UNHCR, the topic of partnerships is especially interesting in the sense that it really is the core of our business, working with others. The UN General Assembly in 2018 affirmed what we call the Global Compact on Refugees, which is really a whole of society approach to finding solutions for refugee issues across the globe. And that whole of society approach really means member states, international organizations, civil society, host communities, refugees themselves, and the private sector. And I think that for us, it really is important to find out how we do partnership better, and very happy to be here today to join you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So now it's my pleasure to give the floor to Jean-Louis from NetHope.
Well, thank you very much for having us here. It's an honor and a privilege to attend to the anniversary, the 50th anniversary. This year, NetHope turns only 20. So we're the young person out there. NetHope is an organization that enables its members and the nonprofit sector to be more effective and efficient and deliver greater impact through the use of technology. Now, how do we do that? Well, we do that by bringing the expertise of the tech sector with the on-the-ground experience of among the largest nonprofits in the world, 60 of our members who operate in the humanitarian development and conservation sectors. Inside NetHope, there is a Center for the Digital Nonprofit, which accelerates digital transformation of our members. And within that center, which I lead, I am the Chief Innovation Officer. My name is Jean-Louis Ecochard. I go by JL, and I'm really honored to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, JL. So it's my pleasure now to give the floor to a colleague, Dianne Dain. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Prado, and thank you, Samir. And again, happy birthday to you and ICC. Very, very excited for you, but age is just a number, Jean-Louis. So NetHope is well on its way to, to making a massive impact in the world. And I'm so honored to be here with Enrica and Baritt and Hans Baritt, with two agencies that have such a really on-the-ground impact in saving lives. I sit on the WHO innovation team. I'm really excited to be a part of the initiatives that we're trying to achieve, which is scaling and sustaining innovations that improve health outcomes in response to country demands, and really building innovation that has capacity and ability to expand and scale and really save lives. So that's our goal. I come from building out the UN Technology Innovation Labs and also the UN Reboot Accelerator for the last 5+ years. So partnerships are really my passion. I have several other capacities that I've served in partnerships, and I'm building partnerships with the private sector is really absolutely the most critical thing that the UN agencies can do to actually accelerate the delivery of the solutions that we need. And obviously with climate change, there's no more urgent need than right now. So thank you for inviting me. Honored to be a part of it.
Indeed, Dianne. Thank you so much. Last but not least, we have with us our director, the director of UNICC, Samir Chauhan. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Prado. It's an honor to be here, and especially with such a distinguished set of colleagues. Enrica, our chair, Hans, who I call one of the best vocal sponsors of ICC today, JL, who I've interacted with and has such excellent vision for the nonprofits space and how technology can make an impact, and Dianne, who we've collaborated with for the past several years in so many different facets of innovation. So pleasure to have all of you on the panel with me. I am the director of UNICC. We are the shared service IT function created 50 years ago, but since we're in the midst of COVID, we decided to call it the year of celebration. So we will continue to organize events throughout the year. And I felt this is very topical. Partnerships. Just looking at the panel members in this discussion today shows you that each one of us collaborate with each other in so many different facets, in so many different ways, that partnerships is the way to achieve our objectives today. And that's the reason we were created 50 years ago. That's the reason we still exist, because we continue to contribute towards finding those right groups of organizations, as others mentioned earlier, private sector, public sector, academia, and others who can come together, collaborate, and make impactful digital solutions work. I've been the director for a little over 2.5 years now, and our board asked us to rethink what's ICC's mandate. And as part of that rethink, they all agreed that we need to be building more than just shared infrastructure, shared platforms, but shared solutions and shared expertise. So I think it drives straight to the heart of what we're trying to talk about today, which is that all of the problems we are all trying to solve cannot be done alone. We have to partner with each other and with others. And in several instances, not everyone, but in several instances, ICC is the right vehicle to make that happen. So pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to hearing from the rest of the panelists today. Thank you.
Thank you, Samir. So I think that now we go into the topic, into the questions. And I have the first question for Enrica. And that would be, how would you define a successful partnership? How this partnership would look like to you?
I can start by telling, for me, partnerships are social contracts, and they require a lot of work on both sides. It's really an art. It's an art of understanding the shared value. What Samir was saying, what's in it? What are the common benefits? Where can we partner? What triggers that interest and what sustains that interest? At WFP, we treasure a number of excellent partnerships, including with ICC. And while I do not have a recipe, what I can tell you is that there are a few ingredients in the secret sauce of a successful partnerships that we have learned over the years. So, for me, the first one is like all good relationships, partnerships take work. It's not just writing a check, getting a service, dropping a technology in a new environment. Successful partnerships need to build trust, need to co-create solutions. They need to be a keen interest on both sides to apply appropriate technologies to solve problems. With great care, not creating new dependencies and new problems, especially for humanitarian organizations like the World Food Programme, or for many of my fellow panelists, for not creating new problems for the same people whose life we are trying to improve. We've heard many times of a digital divide, of leaving no one behind, so to make sure that we do that with care. Second, I think, is a time element, because once you reach that alignment, you need to be patient. You need to be committed for a long time. It doesn't come easy. It doesn't come fast. So you need to have the patience to iterate, to learn, to adjust, to move forward. And have the patience to know that it takes time to make impact. So as humanitarians, it's important for us that we partner with organizations that have the same ethos, the same understanding, but also who do not, with organizations, with companies who are not there just for the spotlight, for the moment of the crisis, but they're with us every step of the way, which means working side by side, learning from each other's experience, and being ready, be more prepared for the next time the partnership can be put in action. As another element, I would say that more often than not, partnerships are made of what money cannot buy. So for us, it's knowledge, expertise, experience, skills that are not for sales. I'm not saying that the World Food Programme, which is a completely voluntarily funded organization, we do not accept donations. But as a CIO, I always look for partnerships where we can identify, co-create technologies and solutions, can help solve issues at the large scale as a real game changer. So you just have to get, for me, is every partnership is different. We've been enjoying a true partnership with ICC for a number of years, where we look at how these ingredients can be mixed in the right way. And I always said that partnerships is really the new leadership. Building strong partnership requires a lot of leadership, because as Samir rightfully pointed out, no one can tackle global challenges of this scale and of this more complex and growing scale on their own, but we can all play a part. And so it's for me, as I said, in WFP, we have a number of partnerships, not many, but the ones that we have are deep, are sustained, are long-term, and definitely ICC is one of them.
Thank you so much. Very, very interesting. So I have another question, but in this case would be, I think, better for Samir and Hans, because we are going to be able to give maybe two perspectives to the same question. And is how has your approach to technology partnerships has changed in the last in the past 3 to 5 years, and what are the driving factors of that shift? Maybe you can start, Hans, and you can follow, Samir.
Yeah, thanks, Prado. It's a good question. I mean, I think technology and partnerships really have been with me throughout my career, but I think you're right. In the last 3 to 5 years, there's been a change and a shift. For me personally, it's really, as we start to understand what does it mean to move towards digital, what does this fourth industrial revolution mean? That's where there was a shift, a marked shift for me in the way I approached the work. It really came from seeking knowledge, trying to understand it. I'm not a CIO. I'm a finance person, administration person, but really did see the technology and the change of technology is something that's going to fundamentally change the way we work, and we definitely need to be prepared. So started doing like others, reading articles, books, etc. But I very much found myself reaching out to the private sector, to former colleagues, relations that I have with the private sector, to understand how are they approaching it. And first of all, I would say that I was very positive. I was positively surprised how open they were to take the call from the UN, how open they were to share their experiences. I think that's just what Enrica mentioned, that there's some things you can't buy, and it's that knowledge and expertise that they're willing to share with us. We took a trip to Silicon Valley, I think it was in 2017 or so, met with one of the largest tech giants out there. And we asked them not to tell us about their products and services which they could sell us. What we asked them was to tell us, how do they manage their own company? How do they manage a multi-billion company with tens of thousands of employees around the world using their own technologies? And it was fascinating. And that was really a turning point for me to say there's something we can learn here. My key concern, though, coming back on the flight was, how are we going to do those things in the UN system? We're very different in the way we work and approach things. And what I'd maybe like to focus on a little bit is, I think, one of the risks, or should I say opportunities, that we have within the UN system. The risk we have in the UN system is that when we look back at ERP or other system designs, we very much work independently. There are examples where we collaborate, but in many areas we worked independently. We've got 30 times ERP across the UN system. We purchased solution. We made consultants very rich. I don't think that's the way forward. And I think that my change in approach is really that we have to come together as a community. We have to partner across agencies. And I asked your colleagues to look back at some of the founding documents of ICC. And it was interesting to read what was written 50 years ago when they were thinking about creating the ICC. Between UNDP, the World Health Organization, and the UN, they wanted to buy a mainframe IBM 360, and they realized it was too expensive for any one of them to do that, to rent it, sorry. And so they joined forces to buy that. And if you read the language and you tweak a few words, it's relevant for today. This notion that we can do more with donor funds by working together across the UN system, I find that fundamental to the way forward. And I think there's also right now a unique opportunity within the UN that we have a Secretary General, his reform agenda, he's very much calling for exactly this. He is calling for us to leverage digital technologies. He's created panels, groups, looking at how we can bring those technologies into the UN with partnerships, obviously, of course. And he's also really pushing for this very simple notion of one UN. Have us work across the lines. We have very different mandates and different operations, but in many areas we work very closely together. WFP, UNICEF, UNHCR, we work very closely in the field on many very interesting products in terms of the response. I think that's really the key, is to find the internal partnerships. It's to leverage and build on institutions like the ICC and looking at solutions for the UN system, and to develop the partnerships outside the UN system.
Thank you so much, Samir.
Thank you, Prado, and thank you, Hans. I couldn't agree with you more. So I came into the UN system about 5.5 years ago, and I have seen such a massive shift in the last 3 years or so, because I think there's a massive realization, and part of it started with the new Secretary General coming in and him sharpening the focus that the UN system can be more digital. So to me, I think we're at a point where across the system, everybody's realizing a majority of the core business can be digitized. Not everything can be. The last mile that WFP goes out and delivers food, or UNHCR goes out and supports refugees, you cannot give them an iPhone and solve the problem, but large parts of the core business of each of the UN agencies can now be digitized. So to me, what that means is technology has to be adopted across the spectrum, not just in the CIO's shop, but in the entire business of each of the UN agencies. And that has several implications. One, the spend on tech just goes up. And back to Hans's point, if there's duplication, if each agency is spending the same money again and again to do the same thing, there's a real opportunity to find ways to partner with each other and do it once, solve it once for the entire system, or for large parts of the system. So I think the opportunities for partnership become much stronger. The business case becomes much stronger. And on the flip side, when you look outside externally, I feel that tech companies are just growing and growing and growing to a point where if you look at the Fortune 500, majority of them are tech companies. So these tech companies are designing solutions, which is great, innovating, but a lot of them, as they sell it to the private sector, is not fit for purpose for the UN. So for us to adopt it, we need to go with a collective voice to the private sector and say, this is great, now can you help us make it work for us? So I think that is a different level of partnership where we collectively, as the UN system or the broader nonprofit world, needs to go and collaborate and partner with these companies and say, can you now innovate at a different level to innovate and make this work for us in the nonprofit space? So I think those are the two big themes I see, which have caused technology to become front and center, and partnerships for technology to become front and center. And if we don't achieve this, I feel, one, the money is wasted because the money is spent again and again. And secondly, I think if we don't adopt it successfully in the UN system, the gap between the haves and the have-nots continues to widen over time. So I think it's morally imperative for us to say, how can we collectively work together and find the right partnerships and adopt technology successfully?
Thank you so much, Samir and Hans. So I have another question. In this case, I would like to make the question for Dianne and for Jean-Louis. This question would be, how do partnerships encourage and drive more creative solutions? And we know that WHO and NetHope are really leading also in that area. So we would like to hear you about that.
Thank you so much, Prado. I just wanted to touch a little bit about the last comments that were made by Enrica on trust and by Hans on learning from the private sector. And Samir, that we need for accelerate and to take the lessons that we learned from the private sector and bring them into UN agencies. And I wanted to just add that I had the opportunity to interview CEOs this year, multinational CEOs of Unilever, Danone, Equity Bank, L'Oreal, Natura. They're CEOs that partner on purpose, and they care very much about exactly what we're talking about. But it was really interesting this year to learn two things that I want to point out that could actually help us as we move forward. This year, there were some foundational changes to how partnerships are done because of COVID, because of what we all went through. And the first is that we're seeing an increase in pro-competitive partnerships for the first time. So the silos are being broken down. We're not so worried about the data silos and protecting our own resources. We're actually accelerating towards pro-competitive partnerships. And then the other thing that we noticed, number two, that was actually measurable, was that the speed of which we do partnerships in the private sector is accelerating. So rapid partnerships is greatly increasing. And I think it's incumbent upon the UN agencies to accelerate as well and find ways that we can accelerate and work together and work with the private sector at their speed. And so oftentimes in the past, I've worked with innovators that really, really want to partner with the UN, and there's just a hard connection point. And it's a challenge to find that connection point. So our team is small at WHO Innovation right now. We're in the nascent stages of developing something that actually can be a connection point, and that we can actually create solutions or help implement solutions that are pulled by the ground and pulled by the needs. I used to work on a project with Muhammad Yunus, and he would always say, don't look at the bird's eye view, look at the worm's hole view. That's what we need. We need innovations and solutions and partnerships that are pulled by the needs on the ground. And I'm Enrica and Hans are in the trenches working with this, so much better situated to address these issues. But on a personal level, I was abandoned as a baby at a Salvation Army hospital. So the work that Enrica and Hans are doing is critical to my life. That kind of work literally saved my life. And so I would encourage, partnerships of all kinds to work with these agencies and to collaborate, and let's solve some of these problems. They've been around forever, and we're facing the greatest humanitarian crisis, the Secretary General has said, since the Second World War, since the UN was created. So now's the time, and we have to do it quickly. Jean-Louis, I hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Dianne. It's very moving what you said, and I cannot agree more than the breaking down the barriers and competition, and the going from the I to the we. And I think that's what's marking our era now. The internet brought us all together on the same technological platform, and this is how we can communicate today in the middle of a pandemic. But we have to go beyond that. We have to solve the big problems of the world together. The problems for which there are no solutions, no digital solutions. We all operate in very diverse field conditions, whether it be that our solar panels become the targets of missiles because they shine in the sun, or whether we have electricity sometimes but not always, or connectivity that is extremely costly and very slow. We have those conditions that don't fit the current technological stack. The current technological stack is designed for New York, it's designed for London, but it is not designed for the refugee camps of Bidi as an example, or the conflict-torn area in Syria. They don't work at that level. For that, we need creativity. And creativity comes from a diverse partnership. There's ample literature that says that diversity brings creativity and innovation. It is the diversity of this panel, the diversity of our agencies, the diversity of the nonprofits that make NetHope, that are creating through the design thinking of listening to people, that wormhole that you talk about from Muhammad Yunus, listening to the people in the ground, including them, making them build solutions that work in the field with the skills that exist in the fields, with the digital infrastructure that exists in the field. And for that, we need the expertise of the tech company that know how to make the bits work well, but we also need the experience of the people on the ground who live those conditions and those problems, who are so close to it, then they can define what success looks like. So what we see is that all too often we jump to the conclusion and we bring up a solution. We have a problem. We are people who want to bring solutions immediately. After all, lives depend on what we do. But in reality, we often fail to spend enough time on the problem. And the problem is really what needs good definition for partnership to work. Once partners have a good definition of the problem in common, it's amazing how collectively they can bring a solution. So by getting clarity on the problems, it leads to the practical design and the responsible design of solutions that later on needs very little adaptation, implement very well, get adoption, and cost us less to maintain collectively. So we must tap into these partnerships to create a network that will be bringing program impact at scale. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Diana and Jill. So to follow up with the topic, I would like to again come back to you, Enrica. And in this case would be to ask you what are the most critical changes that we must make now to have a robust, resilient and sustainable partnership to face the future in an effective or efficient way, in your opinion?
You know, I have so many ideas after hearing my fellow panelists, because and it's going to be very hard to put my thoughts together, but maybe I could try to pack it in between external, internal, and with the people we serve in terms of what are the challenges and opportunities. Externally, I think at hearing some of you speak, I think it's the speed of change. You know, we expect to work at a certain speed, and some of the private sector companies we partner with have a different level of, you know, sense of what urgency means, or what speed and action, and we see that despite the fact that I believe the WFP is a very, you know, we strive to be a very efficient and action-oriented organization, we still struggle a lot with this differential of what speed means. So that's one of the things. So maybe one of the things we need to change is we need to get faster if we want to. You know, we need to adjust somehow the speed level with others. I like to reflect on some of you. I think some of you talked about that innovation has, you know, ideas and partnerships need to work for us. I also think we need to do a little bit of an introspection and say that are we too close to the problems in a way that we do not see the forest from the trees? That we take, you know, maybe we need to find somewhere between the worm's view and the bird's eye view, somewhere in between, where we detach ourselves, that we don't look for solutions to solve our current, you know, just to maybe automate our current processes, but to rethink ourselves. Are we ready to question ourselves? Are we ready to disrupt our business? And I think that this is, as actors are not in this partnership, I think we need to be able to be ready to question ourselves. And so, which we are not always. But, you know, I hear often, but we do things like this way, but your innovation doesn't work here. We do things differently. Well, sometimes if we really want to disrupt things, we need to think that the way that we do things may not be the best way to do things. So are we ready to reconsider the way that we do things? And I think that's something that we don't always do very well. And that openness to change, I think, is the other part. For me, is the next element is about localization. You know, really bringing it to solve problems that are local, but at the same time, what I said at the beginning is that co-creation. Don't look for what works in Silicon Valley and try to transfer someplace else and say it doesn't fit. But, you know, this is where your creativity comes, and it says, well, what are this problem can we change, and what of the solution can we change? Don't try to fit, you know, as square peg on a round hole, but at the same time, don't get stuck on your round hole, because maybe your problem is actually squared. So I think that openness, that innovative spirit, that ability to change, that ability to understand the other perspective, and I understand, you know, and I agree with Hans. Sometimes we also. Hans, I think your trip to the Silicon Valley was an eye-opener, and I think we need to create this osmosis from both sides. And I'm not saying that all the partners are in the Silicon Valley, but, you know, said that the private public sector, you know, meeting together in different contexts and co-innovating, co-development is going to be hopefully a way to remove some of the challenges that we face in creating sustainable, long-term, effective and efficient partnerships. Just a few thoughts triggered from your very, very insightful comments. Thank you, fellow panelists, for triggering that.
Thank you so much, Enrica. So Also, going forward with this idea of delivering innovative solutions, I would like to hear from you, Dianne, on how WHO is delivering those innovative solutions, fostering partnerships, but also inclusive culture in the organization. So, because I know that we are also a little bit part of WHO, so I think it would be great if you can share what WHO is doing in that area.
Thank you so much, Prado. Well, we are obviously working on multiple tracks to scale and sustain innovations that are being pulled from the ground and from the country demand. And really the knowledge of what the needs are at the country level is relatively inaccessible to many innovation funders and innovator ecosystems. So a lot of the potentially impactful innovations, they don't reach the people that we need to have the most. And so that's one of our goals as the WHO, is to really address the triple billion. We have triple billion goals for people who we really want to help. And the partnerships that help us achieve this mission are at the regional offices and potentially at the country level. So that's really where our focus is. I have one example of a solution that was recently, it's piloted in Somalia for the first time. And I can talk to it because to me, it was a very exciting example of a collaboration. There was oxygen concentrators. Oxygen tanks are very prohibitively expensive. They're too expensive for most of the world to access, and the developing world especially. And so there's oxygen concentrators that can pull oxygen out of the air. However, there's not enough power, consistent power in most of these countries to actually power these oxygen concentrators. So we implemented a solar-powered solution that's now actually being piloted in Somalia and being requested from other countries. It's something that's, not on the cutting edge of technology, obviously, but sometimes it's just putting those pieces together. And so we're really trying to, like Enrica pointed out, take innovations and put them together in a way that countries can actually use them. And that's really our priority. How do we, whether it's something as simple as, a bench that helps mental health, like a friendship bench, I think there's one that's on the table. And we actually also take innovations from our larger partners, and they're actually at a point where they can scale. And so we actually are just in the we're in the nascent stages. We have great leadership, and we're just about ready to grow that part of it. So.
Thank you very much. Very impressive, really. Thank you. So I think we are reaching almost the end of the roundtable. I think we could stay here for hours with this super interesting topic. I have my last question, and this I think is for Jean-Louis and for Shamir, and is what should be the contribution from the private sector in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, thank you. I'm really inspired by all the panelists here. What is happening here is we are co-creating, and we are starting a partnership. And I hope that this continues and extends beyond that panel. Because for 2 decades, NetHope has worked at the intersection of the nonprofit and the tech sector. We know what works in partnership, we will know what doesn't. We know what will be there in the next 3 to 5 years, and we know the hopes that will not be realized as well. Not because they're not the right ones, but because at the end of the day, as we've heard in this call, it's a lot about people. And it's a lot about people who live in the ground. It's about culture. It's about changing a culture. It is not about the tool and the solution and the features and the functions. Those will be disappearing in the next 3 to 5 years. We will have another version of video conferencing. Whatever that is, we will have it. But the people behind it will not change that much. And so it's a change in culture that I would call first. A change in culture that goes to the speed that Enrica mentioned, a change in culture that gets to the innovation that should reach the people that Dianne mentioned, a change in culture that creates shared solutions and expertise that Samir mentioned. Right? That needs to be different. We as human beings need to behave differently. And I think that because for a brief moment in the history of humanity, we have all been forced to use technological tools, whether we liked it or not, in isolation, and had time to understand what those buttons did and whether it broke something or not, we've become a little bit more digital as a result. But what we have to do is become more digital in mindset, which is starting to be more agile, bringing solutions that may not be perfect, but work really well, that don't need to be earth-shattering and moonshots, but can be that friendship bench that you mentioned, Dianne. Solutions that work, that deliver impact. We need to do that quickly, as Enrica mentioned, right? We need to design for the field and for the people. So the corporate sector has done that. For decades, they have ingrained themselves on the search for profit to become more responsive to their customers. They have that agility and that culture, and we need to learn how to bring that in. The other thing is that according to our research in NetHope, we know that 39% of the program activities of our members don't have an app for that. There is no solution technologically. We need to create and invent them. Are we going to create 60 different ones for the 60 NetHope members, plus another one for UNHCR, plus another one for WHO, plus another one for UNHCR, plus another one? And you see my point, right? For innovation that doesn't exist, for solutions that have not been created, can we sit next to each other and create them together? I think we can. Recently, NetHope brought forward the frontline humanitarian logistics on the problem of very simply delivering the goods on the last mile of the supply chain of goods. Right? We brought in nonprofits that normally have different missions but still work on the same places. We brought in the topmost and largest tech companies that compete fiercely in the product space, who had their engineers working side by side to co-create a solution together. That partnership is working. But we also need to increase the use of Fund for Digital. When I speak with donors, they tell me two things. First, that rarely does somebody ask them for a donation for the digital space. And then second, that if somebody were to ask, they would not have a reference point to be able to give. And we know that there is out there that story about wasted money in technology. Well, that's probably a story of the past, because that is not a story that we see through collaboration and partnership. That is the story of people being the I, not the we. Because we know that when people partner together, less money is wasted and more impact is delivered. So that is what the for-profit sector and civil society have to bring in the next 3 to 5 years. A transfer of culture and the creation of joint solutions with additional funding being unlocked for civil society and the entire UN complex. Thanks.
So, in fact, Samir, I wonder if we can, we would like to delegate on Hans the question that because that I asked to you, and it's about the how would the private sector contribute in the next 3 to 5 years? Because I think having UNHCR perspective here would be also very important for us. Hans, would you like to take that question?
Yeah, with pleasure. The next 3 to 5 years, I mean, I think it's not just 3 to 5 years, Prado. I think it's many more years. It's kind of the future. I don't see it as a short-term way. The key for UNHCR is the private sector partnerships. Like Enrica said, we look at the private sector not just as a supplier, but also as a partner that provides us financial support. More than 10% of our money comes from the private sector donations. But it's really trying to unlock the private sector's knowledge and expertise and to transfer that over to UNHCR. This is really what we're trying to do. Like Enrica said, we provide services. There's transportation services, moving goods and people around the world, etc. But we're also working with the private sector, looking at how we find employment opportunities for refugees, how we look at education, internet connectivity for refugees, energy, cash-based interventions, where they're helping us. WFP is actually a leader in this area, and there obviously we're working with the private sector. There's a recent study done here at UNHCR, and if you Google UNHCR private sector partnerships evaluations, you'll find a very nice report, and where we actually did a study to try to understand how we can do the partnerships with the private sector better. And what we found was that our private sector partners want to do more than just contribute financially. They really want to contribute, what Enrico said, is this knowledge expertise. And I think that's the key with what JL mentioned as well, how we unlock that. The key, though, really is, and again, it's about this communication. And what we realized in our evaluation is that we have our own language in the UN, our own acronyms, our own way of thinking and speaking, frankly. And when we meet a private sector partner who may have a different set of vocabulary and a different point of reference, it's kind of this square holes and round pegs, or vice versa, as Enrique mentioned. And I think we're working internally to try to develop a training program to have our staff understand how to engage with the private sector and really look at how do we develop estimates of impact, how do we look at business cases, and then also how we as an organization present a coherent message to the private sector. We're a large organization, more than 17,000 personnel around the world, and we are approaching the private sector and sometimes the same private sector actors at the global, regional, and local levels, and not always with a coherent message. So we're working internally to improve that. And I think also it's kind of this change in the way we approach the partnerships. And it's also developing what we call institutional incentives for our staff on the ground to really work, or globally, frankly, work with these global partners. I think if I were to sum it up, Enrica talked about trust and time and long-term. I'd also like to focus on commitment. And I think it is that we need this commitment on both sides. Our issues are not short-term. Many of our issues, unfortunately, are longer-term. And we need that commitment, and especially as we're going through our transformation, we need that commitment to go on that journey. And globally, right now, we're very lucky. We have more than 250 partners, private sector partners in the 60 countries. So a lot to work from, but we know we can do better. And I think that the private sector is there, they're open for it. It's just we have to find the right medium, the right set of objectives, and the right frameworks to work with them to deliver better to persons of concern.
Thank you very much, Hans. So I think we are reaching the end of the roundtable. Many interesting ideas has been shared. I am so happy that we are recording the session because everyone could enjoy it and go over them. Maybe I would highlight a couple of points that all of you have commented. And I would say that is first, partnership is built on mutual trust. You have said that, Enrica, that has to be there every step of the way. Also, that we need to look at the private sector, not only for funding, but also for knowledge, for ideas, as you have said, Hans, and also to ask them to design solutions with the local context, as you have said, GL, and also ask them to collaborate and not compete, collaborate on collaborative platforms, even if they are later positioning and competing on products or services on top. That we need to ask them to increase funding for digital, because underfunding digital projects are creating digital segregation. And also, finally, I would also put the focus on your comments, Hans, about working together within UN, avoiding duplications, Samir, as you have said, even outside IT units, but also within business units. And also question ourselves, as you have said, Enrica, on how we are doing things, and try to to be able to understand the other organization point of view, to collaborate, be ready to deploy solutions rapidly. And somehow we need to do it because the Secretary General reform is encouraging us to do that, to leverage digital technology with partnership for a one UN. And I would say, let me finish maybe with a couple of words from one of the greatest poets of our time that I have humbly translated into English. He was Mario Benedetti, and he said, partner, you know you can count on me. Not up to 2, not up to 10, but count on me. And with that, I will thank you really everyone who has attended this roundtable for them to count on us to learn about this topic. Thank you all of you panel members for contributing with your knowledge and your time. And especially, I would like to thank you, all the organizations, everyone that is working together, and also sometimes counting on UNHCR to make the world a better place. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.